TNT.
What?
That's dynamite.
Somebody could set out together.
That's funny. So when the marriage comes back, you want to start? It's on video anyway, right?
Yeah, go ahead and start.
Oh, okay, yeah, we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna talk really fast, right? No hi, my name is Craig Miller, and I am a mental health therapist. I've been a Christian mental health therapist, but primarily a licensed mental health therapist for 42 years. And I just tell everybody I know I don't look it. You know, I started when I was 2 years old. Well, that's a lie. You know. I started when I was 10. Okay. But anyway, I have many books out. So I worked in medical for about 17 years. And I've worked in outpatient for probably the rest of the time. I own Masterpiece Counseling for 30 years. I just actually gave that to another person. So I sold Masterpiece last November. So now I don't own it, but I work there. But today I'm going to primarily talk about out of one particular book. If you want to get more information about this, I recommend you get this book. So this is Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. And in here, I talk about the emotional connection to your condition. And so I stumbled into this primarily through my own healing. So when I was in college, I worked in the kitchen for helping to get through college to make money. And in my sophomore year, you know, I'm working in the swap station, pulling out these big mashed potato pots, and my back went out, you know, just from my position. Went to the ER, it was never the same. So for 30 years, I had on and off back issues, all right? So for one particular time, I went to a church that was in healing, and I was into, you know, obviously emotional healing, but I never connected the physical, emotional, and spiritual. So I went there, and they asked me to lie on the floor. They prayed over me, put their hands over me, and a lot of emotional release, physical release. And anyway, long story short is it was totally healed. That's totally healed. So what I didn't realize was there's a connection between the physical and the emotional. And when I started going into more of that, recognizing that you can pray for a person all you want, and releasing any unforgiveness issues, any issues. And I don't want to make this all about spiritual, because I really want to combine what you do and also what emotion is connected to that, and just naturally how our bodies can created. And so what I found more and more is when a person, you can't heal them, or they just things won't just release. And you know, as massage therapist, that when you work with somebody, people cry, people moan a lot, you know there's a lot of emotion, they tell you there's a lot, and you have that release going on. It's because we're going to take on something and we'll hold on to it if there's nobody allowing us to release it at the time of it if it happens. Or at least when we hold on a lot of emotion, you know that the emotion that's held in can turn into physical issues. Even the Center for Disease Control, they say that. Now, in my book, I say it's 85. Last year, they've upped it. 92% of physical illness have a psychological root. That's huge. So I talk about that. And if you want to go further about praying, this is the second book that I have. Well, this is my latest. I have 6 books total out. This is How to Pray When Healing Doesn't Happen, for those that are interested. So, but primarily in this book, in the back of this book, I have 460 medical diagnoses, as well as all parts of the body. And what I do is I have the emotional connection to that. What I find is when I'm working with somebody, and whether I pray for them or they just talk to me, they'll come in and they have this physical issue. And And what I'm realizing that they have a connection emotionally that's going on. Same thing with what you do. So we do the same thing. You just work with the body. I work more with the mind, but it's all connected to the body. You know, it's all connected to the mind. It's all connected to the spirit and what they believe and what they hold on to. So I'll give you an example. So you know that stuff starts in the very beginning. We can have emotional issues starting from utero. And so in utero, we can have, if your mother was anxious, you're going to be anxious. If your mother was depressed, you're going to be born depressed. It's because of the chemical changes that happen. For anxiety, for example, you know that when I want to talk more medical with you because of your knowledge, is that what the adrenal gland produces adrenaline when I'm very anxious, it produces two major issues, two chemicals that more work affects us in our work is the adrenaline. Well, obviously, you know, that's a neurotransmitter hormone, and that's the fight or flight. Either I'm going to get out, or I'm going to run, or I'm going to fight. The other one is cortisol. Cortisol also creates, then that's a steroid hormone. That will create the muscles to make it stronger. But we don't realize that. So if I'm holding on to all this emotion, especially the anxiety, the cortisol will keep on growing and exploding. And what happens is that, as you know, with steroids, after about 6 months to a year, it backfires and starts crystallizing and also makes things create aches and pains in our muscles and in our joints. And what we need to do is we need to obviously work that out. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work. They're going to be coming at you week after week or whatever you see them because they can't think it because there's an emotional connection to that. And you know that. And the problem is it never ends. The problem is they're just hurting themselves more. And so, well, like for example, if a mom in utero has a lot of anxiety, then the anxiety, the cortisol, but as well as the adrenaline will wash over the baby. The baby becomes anxious. The baby will then pull the adrenaline out of their own adrenal gland because it's so small. The adrenal gland becomes exhausted really fast. So then the baby's born with an exhausted adrenal gland, produces ADD, produces anxiety disorders, type A personalities, and you can't get out of it. Or if they're born into a home where there's a lot of conflict or trauma or turmoil, then that creates PTSD, which is the other thing that creates something like PTSD, stress thinking, cortisol, and it goes on. Because once we have a baseline of it, and by the way, when we then grow into a home as a child, let me give you an example. So there's a woman that she had headaches all the time. She had migraines all the time, and she couldn't relax. Now we know migraines has a lot to do with stress, has a lot to do with a chemical imbalance to some degree. So, but she had these migraines, and she couldn't understand why. She said it was a pounding feeling, it was a constriction feeling, a little bit out of sorts because it was how she described it. It was more overwhelming, like a restriction, and she didn't like enclosed places. And when she was stressed out, she'd feel this in her brain. So I asked God to take her back to when she first felt this feeling. And knowing this information from her mom, she went back to a time when she was in the birth canal, and the doctor used forceps to pull her out of the birth canal. And from that it damaged her skull. And the impression from that, it creates a predisposition to that feeling in her brain. And when we went back to that time where she was able to release the emotion from that time, I would teach you what I think what you could be able to do with yourselves or even with your clients. When she released that emotion from that anger, from the helplessness that the child had, even though it's an infant or a fetus, what happens when she released that and forgave the mom, forgave the doctor, the pain went away. And so what I'm finding is people will hold on to things in childhood, for example, that in childhood, our predisposition starts from in childhood, our external world creates our internal belief of reality. So if my parents are yelling, If my parents are yelling, it creates an impression or an event. I have an emotion from that of fear, and then the emotion always creates a belief. I put away the old event, so I live off the emotional belief. So when somebody's yelling or somebody's upset or somebody is a strong personality, it creates an emotion. And the emotion is that I feel afraid of people. So I don't like conflict. I don't like strong personalities. I can't be around people. So I'm living off of this. Now in the faith world, they'll believe that Satan will come in and make that work, which is true. He can. Because now, remember now, Satan will come in through the door of, if you have Jesus in your heart, Satan can't touch you because you have Jesus in your heart. This is 1 Corinthians 3:16. I just need to do this really quickly because I don't have a lot of time. So the 1 Corinthians 3:16 is God dwells within us. So because of that, we have all Jesus has. The point is that Satan can't touch us. But trauma is the open door for him to come in because we're allowing that to come in. So you can get rid of that trauma and get rid of the Satan new deliverance and all that. But the problem is if you don't deal with the emotion, and if we, in my profession and your profession, don't deal with the emotion, that stuff can continue to come back and you'll never get rid of whatever that knot you're trying to get rid of. You'll get rid of it originally, but it's either going to go to someplace else or it's going to come back because the emotion won't let it go. What I'm holding on to. Now you can help release it. You're a great releaser. You're an amazing releaser. I'm an amazing releaser. But if they hold on to this, it's going to come back and they won't let it go. And you know that. Okay? But now, if you want to keep ourselves in business, okay, just let them keep it. But we know we don't like. We don't want that. I want to. I don't. For me,
Even I don't want that.
I want to work myself out of a job with you because I want to get more referrals because I'm really effective. But if they don't feel like I'm working or I'm doing it, they're either going to not come back or they're not going to refer people. Right? We know that. Plus that goes against what I believe. You know, I want to help them. Not. I don't want to be a maintainer. I want to be a terminator. That's what I tell people, right? So we have to realize that stuff happens in utero, in child. So in child, my external world determines my internal belief of reality. So that's what I'm feeling. And then when I go into adulthood, what happens is my internal beliefs create my external reality. So how I deal with life in adulthood is always because of what I was given in childhood. So negative responses in adulthood is typically unresolved childhood experiences. Okay. So negative responses in adulthood is typically childhood experiences. It's unresolved childhood experiences. So the point is that everything that I just described about what we see, if you're into scriptures, it's based on Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they won't depart from it. That's what we actually happens to us. So people that have negative stuff, you come into your office and like they're always stressed out. They go, I don't know if you allow them to talk or if they talk to the or they're talking to you, they're going to go on and on and on about all this stuff in their life. And sometimes you want to charge them double because you're like their counselor also. Okay, so well, go ahead, because it's fine with me. So the point is that that's the stuff that they're letting go, but they're also releasing it. When they talk to you about the stuff that's going on, they're processing it while you're processing out their stuff in your body. Now, it's a double whammy. Maybe you should pay. Maybe you should charge them twice. Anyway, but the point is that so in adulthood, think about it. If they don't seem to work it out, and they're always having all this stuff, then that means that they're not processing the earlier stuff in their life. It's like, think about it. You got a person 34 years old. They seem to be pretty with it. And maybe they're, a high-falutin job, and maybe even they're a Christian and they've God in their life. They have all the power and authority to think, or some God in their life. The point is, I think like why are they so messed up? Like, why do they always go through all this stuff? It's because of what they received in childhood. So what I want to do is I want to give you some things of what you can do about it, right? This is really kind of cool because you need to recognize that you'll know that we all have pressure points, all right? One of the great, what a really good releaser, well, there's releases all over the body. And what I've recognized is that when a person has an issue that's going on in their life, they need to process it out. Now you can massage it out. You can massage out the knot or either the emotion or the hard spot as much as you want, but you know it's going to return. So let me ask you: do you get a lot of people that have similar knots, like the knot just like does it go away and then it keeps on coming back? Okay, that's the emotion is in that knot, all right? Because it's got to come somewhere. Okay, so the point is that every part of the body, and in this book, for example, every part of the body has is where the emotion comes. And in the book, I talk about that there's the primary places, and I need to show you this grid. Yeah, I don't have it with me, but so in the book, I talk about how each part of your body is where some emotion will go. For example, so the liver, so I'll explain it this way. Every emotion has a energy source and it has a vibrational frequency, right? And every part of the body, has a vibrational frequency. And the vibrational frequency of the lungs has the same vibrational frequency of loss and grief. Loss and grief emotion has the same vibrational frequency as the lungs. So what happens is, if you have a lot of loss and grief in your life, that loss and grief is going to come into the lungs. If you have a cold or some kind of congestion, and you have a lot of loss of grief that's already there, the loss of grief won't let that be healed because the meridian energy flow will not happen. You all know about the meridian flows, right? Of course. So when the emotion that's held in, suppressed emotion will always stop your flow of energy, and the meridians will be actually stuck. And so, as I mentioned, like for example, I had a gentleman that came to my office. The doctors, I've got several actually here. They can actually. You have them?
Yeah.
Here, I've got some right here. Yeah, hold on a minute. We do the right one. You want the advanced one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me take one also. Okay, so in the back, on the back, you'll see it, and I can give you some more. You'll see that grid. That grid is where the most common. Give this gentleman one. Do you have an extra one? Yeah. Okay, so on the back, you'll see. Let me go back to the lungs. Okay, so the lungs is the loss of grief. So you have the affected organ, and then you have the emotion that's connected to it. So this gentleman comes in, he had a lot of depression, so the psychiatrist or his doctor referred him to mental health. So I see this guy, he's coming down, but he's panting and not breathing well. He's about really close to needing to be on oxygen. He can't go upstairs or walk the long distances until he has, he's shortness of breath, until he takes his breath. But when it came in, I know that there's a connection between loss of grief and his lungs. So even though he was depressed, which is all part of the issue, I noticed that his physical problem was a big issue of his lungs. So I said to him, so do you have a lung issue? He said, yeah, I've been short of breath for all these years and I need to be on oxygen. How long has that happened? He said 7 years. I said, so typically I said, what happened 7 years ago? Well, the guy we lived by Detroit, and he worked at a foundry. A foundry, they melt molten steel to make car parts. And in that, all that stuff comes out of that. He said, if you don't leave that place, even with a mask, it was just killing us. So if you don't leave that place, you're going to die. So he leaves it, and because it's been 7 years, he's a Christian, and why aren't you healed by now? Because of God, you know this, God, we've been made and created to have an amazing ability to heal ourselves. So we have to be healthy to do that, and the flow has to be there. The energy flow, the meridian flow needs to be there, but she didn't have it. So I said, what happened 7 years ago also that we stopped it? He said, well, my wife left me and she took the kids. It devastated me. It is the worst. It devastated him. So he lost his job. He lost his wife. He lost his children. She said she took him out of state. So I lost his family. So basically, the guy lost his manhood. He lost his career. He lost his family. He lost his Parkinson's and everything. So we went through every grief and we released that grief. We released the hurt, grief, and loss. And each one forgave himself for what he did to why the wife left. He gave his wife a leaving, his boss letting him go, being in a situation medically. And when I did that, his lungs cleared up. His lungs literally cleared up. All I do is get rid of the emotion. And so you got to recognize that the emotion plays a big part. So another one is our back. And you know, 80% of Americans have back problems. And you know that, you work with that a lot. And so you go back. So everything has a function and a purpose. The main purpose of our back, the spinal column, is for structure and support. You can't sit, stand, or walk without the structure and the purpose of the spine. And so what I realized, the most common emotional connection of not allowing it to either be healed or to hurt the back is a lack of emotional support in your life. The kidney is a lot of fear. The shoulders, because the purpose of the shoulders is burden bearing, and typically, or to hold things. Typically, our shoulder issues has a lot to do with burden, taking on burdens, responsibilities. Mostly women have more shoulder issues than men do, typically, because women are nurturers, born nurturers, men are not. And we take on more things. When we see mom and dad as a little child, we want to be loved. We think by doing more and taking on more responsibility, we're going to be loved or accepted. And we take that on more. And when they start that habit and our parents don't stop it, we do more of that. We take that into adulthood and we become overly responsible. All the burden, we don't let it go. People pile more on top of us, and then we can't let that go. And before you know it, I've got all this pain. Now, so you're in your office, you have a client in your office that got a lot of shoulder pain, a lot of pain in the back. And you know that the brachial plexus is a great place for releasing, right? I mean, typically. Now, I have a question. So an LMT told me one time that the brachial plexus, I want to ask your opinion, runs along the hands, arms, the meridian point, chest, upper back, side of neck, back of head, and then to the heart and lungs. And by tapping and by massaging that upper back, you can help the person regulate the heartbeat through the hypothalamus, hippocampus, and which also in that area attacks then the trauma to let the root cause go. Did you know that? And so that was pretty astounding to me. Now, I'm all in tapping and releasing, and obviously you'll do the more massaging part. And so what I always recommend people to do is now what I teach people is to do bilateral stimulation, which is a little bit first have a person to hug you. So when they're on the table, there's a couple of things I can teach you to do. So first of all, when that information comes in, when you have a lot of information come into a person, I want to show you two things first. That information comes into my brain, either the visual, right or left, information comes in visual, right or left, audio, right or left, or the feeling. So it's eyes, heart, and eyes, ears, and heart. And so what happens is we receive trauma through all our senses. There's 5 senses, and you see them all. The three that are most powerful are the ones of physical trauma, and we got to work that out, when it's ready. And the other one is visual trauma, is what I see creates an emotion, and what I hear creates an emotion, and it goes like taste and smell. So what we're finding is, what I'm finding as I'm teaching people is, we were created with all these senses. We were created in a way to release. We were created to release. We were not created to hold on to it. So your job is to help the people release. So they're not going to let it go. They're just going to have to keep on coming back, as I said. So one way to do that is you want to obviously use the pressure point. Another great pressure point, is the collarbone process right here. That's for that's a stuck point. Are you familiar with EFT, emotional freedom technique, where the different parts? I don't know if you ever do any of the techniques out here where the releasing. Yeah. Yeah.
To let you guys know, on the 8th at our open house will be somebody here kind of talking about EFT.
Yeah, I would look into EFT more because you want to, if there's some things you could do, like for example, I've got a list here, you can photocopy this if you want, but like the collarbone is the kidney point. This is the meridian point, all right? Collarbone is a meridian point. It's for also moving forward, of creating more confidence, and also when they're stuck. It also is releasing when it's stuck. And then you other ones. So you got under the arm is the spleen. You'll also have under the eye, the eyebrow here is the bladder point, stomach point. This is trauma for the releasing trauma, hurt, and sadness. Anyway, this goes on. This gallbladder point. There's underneath is the large intestine point. So it's good to know that you would have them touch that point as you're doing massage. If you want to help them, and they're just telling you, like Austin, obviously we're not doctors, but we can help places heal, right? And so what I tell people is, as you're doing a massage, they say, can you ask them when they tell you this issue? He says, it sounds like you remember that really well. He says, yeah. Do you have an image of that thing that happened? Yeah. Says, well, do something. While I give you a massage, because obviously, if you can do bilateral massages, that will actually release it better. And now, obviously, you're going to go one place. You're going to go, obviously, you're going to be moving around. So if you do bilateral sometimes, that will help them release it. And I'll tell you why. When we dream during REM because we're supposed to release. We release the laughing, the crying, sweating, dreaming. Dreaming is one of the best releasers. And it's one of the most natural ones because there's one primary reason for dreaming, and that's to release trauma. Because when we dream during REM. REM is rapid eye movement. So our eyes go back and forth really fast. When it goes to the right side, it stimulates the right hemisphere to release emotion. When it goes to the left side, it stimulates the left side to release memory. The left side is the memory and logic side, the right side is the creative and emotional side. When it goes back and forth, all you do is release emotional memory. So what I do, I teach people, because this is how we're created. God created that way. Now we also can dream for people that want this. Dreaming is also to hear from God. So I would teach people to see them feeling hugged and loved, because when you receive the trauma originally, like even as a child, all my senses are shut down. That's why a child is so vulnerable that when I have 5 senses and I have a trauma, all at once, all 5 senses shut. But if I have somebody that comes around and gives me comfort, then what I can do is my senses relax. I open up all 5 senses and I can let it go really quickly. That's why children can let go and feel better really quickly. The hurt, they feel better. What happens is the people that we see didn't have that opened up. And so the more senses that I have shut down, the more I'm going to hold on to. The more I hold on to, the more I'm going to have aches and pains. The more I'm going to have tension. The more I'm going to feel down and depressed and anxious, right? What happens is, for us to help them feel better faster, or have a cleaner release, so to speak, is for us to also, I will then have them, when I think of somebody like a grandparent, uncle, God, or Jesus, And then when we, as a parent, hug somebody, we would typically give them a little pat on the back, and guess what? We're doing it wrong. We don't realize it. And so that's why I have people literally, it's called, in the book, in this book, I talk about it. So this is the love hug and little love pat, which is you do a little love pat, which is really, it's a bilateral stimulation. And you're literally helping yourself through manual REM to release it automatically. And now what I do is, if people are ready, in the book I talk about the next higher level is to find out where it is visually. So the more senses you can use during your release, the amazing amount of breakthrough you're going to have. So I do physical, I do then audio, tell me what you heard, and then I also will do where do you see it. So now, remember now, when information happens around us, all these stimulations is going to come into my brain one of 6 places. So we are created to release. So you watch, when you talk to somebody, you ask them a question. So when did that happen to you? That was about 2005. The last place they look when they're looking around is where it's located, stuck. And when they come back to the present, they're bringing from the event to the present, and the emotion releases with it. So you can literally do, if you do it a little bit while they're telling you a trauma issue, do something, try it. If you can do some more bilateral stimulation, it really doesn't matter where it's on the body. And also say, hey, try something. If you see that image of what happened, try something. Look to the right, and it can be obviously in either way, in whatever way they're looking, wherever they're lying or sitting. Look to the right. Now, they have their eyes open or closed. So look to the right and just look it over there. See that image over there. And then look to the left. See the image over there. Which side seems to be stronger or more intense of the image? On the right side. And so try some bilateral spin, and then also have them then see it on the right side, like getting it away, or peeling it away, or throwing it away. And what'll happen is you'll just notice that it will just dissipate. It will just go away. Isn't that amazing? You'll just notice that because they're releasing more by using more of their senses, as well as they're allowing themselves to let something go that they're unintentionally holding on to. So the earlier I am, the earlier I receive it, what happens is the more I'm going to hold on to it because nobody's there to tell me I can release it, and I didn't know how to. That's why you have to have somebody around to help you release it. Does that make sense? So, do you have any questions regarding this? Is like really fast, and I'm just telling you about 6 hours worth of stuff. Okay, so, but I want you to be able to utilize, notice something. So, what I really recommend you do, and whether you're a person of faith or not, you can, this is really good information, and also the EFT stuff will be really interesting because that'll add to it, all your reading points, right? And that'll help you to expand that release point. Because, I'm sure that, like myself, I got a person that's in front of me, and they're talking about their issues, and they just can't get it out. They're just not releasing it. And you're working it, at least your work, you're working it, and it just won't release, right? So I'm sure you got probably other things that you do to release it, okay? But it's because they're not releasing it. They will stop you from releasing it. And they stop me from allowing you to release it. They stop God from allowing you to release it. You can pray for a person, and they can stop it because we have freedom of will. And I can choose what to do with what I have. And the earlier I received it, and the more I received it from an authority figure, the more I'm going to hold on to it because I'm afraid to let it go. Some people have had it for so long, that's their identity. So I received some hurt that's going on, some fear. I take that on, and I adapt my life around it. And the longer I hold on to this feeling that I'm having, the more it becomes part of my identity. I've actually had people that would come to see me And, you know, listening to what I'm doing, I'm a pretty assertive, pretty aggressive about it. And I try to be nice about it. But I've had people then stop seeing me because they didn't want to lose their disability. They don't want to get better. And, you know, I'm sure if you've been in this long enough, you know what I'm talking about. So you wonder, like, why? It's because that becomes your identity. That's their life. That's what they know. There are some people that I see, like these dysfunctional marriages, like they're angry at each other all the time, and that's their function. And some people function out of stress more than they do out of relaxation. They'll just continue coming to me because they make them feel better. They come to see me and they make them feel better. But I've actually said to people, look, if you just want to chit chat the whole time and tell me this stuff, I'd rather you see a friend because I'm not able to really help you if you don't let me go deeper to deal with why you feel that way, why you always feel this way when you're around these certain types of people. Does that make sense? Any questions at all?
I just have a couple comments, very interesting, so thank you very much. My first comment is what you did to me in that way.
Yeah.
Was amazing, thank you. It's that you asked permission. So as a therapist, I want to make sure that anytime we're delving into the emotional, just like we ask permission to massage with glue, even if they check that off of the intake form,
Right.
that we ask them their permission first and get an affirmative yes.
Good point.
And
So
that
can
it's not
I'm going to repeat that further here. So anytime you're then with a client, makes perfect sense that you want to go into areas like emotions, you want to ask permission, and, you know, about that. And if you know what's really interesting is that as you're doing this stuff just comes out anyway. They're just going to tell you a lot of stories. So I hear this with cosmetologists, you know, with hairdressers, you know, it's the same thing. And it's because you're making them comfortable. That's actually a compliment. And so when you say, so you could always dive into it and say, wow, it sounds like that was a really hard time for you. And do you mind if I ask you a question about helping you maybe release it a little bit better? I say, no, not at all, because why wouldn't they? Because they're there to release anyway. Because you could say to them, you could try something by releasing it through your visual. And do you mind if I could give you a little exercise to do? He says, no. Look to your right as you see that happening, then look to your left. Which side seems to be more intense or stronger feeling? And as you do it, now as they do that, try some bilateral stem, okay? The stimulation, okay, and see what happens with that. You don't have to, but I'm saying that would just add to that.
Goes into, I don't know, so to put them in something.
Yeah. So what do you want? If you want a little bit more cupping, you mean? Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It doesn't matter where it's at. Because the closer to the head, the better. And if you want to do it on a brachial plexus, that would really probably that's a great release point. Or up by the collarbone or on the back, you know, something like that. Or moving. Usually, what I'll do is I'll just have people move up the area up to here. But it's totally up to you in terms of what I use. I don't do your work. But it's fascinating information. So, well, I know you've got to get going, and I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Good. Thank you very much.
I absolutely appreciate that. Thank you. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we will pass it along to the rest of the team. So,
All right.